Okay, morning everybody. I'm James and I'll introduce you to Miss Tung in a minute. We're going to do some very techie stuff this morning, so hopefully Murphy's Law doesn't apply. If it can go wrong, it will go wrong. I'm going to share now. Okay. Okay, all good? Okay, so welcome. I see 42 participants online and some here in the room, appropriately enough in the pandemic era. Online conferences, we won't have to travel around the world, increasing our carbon footprint. We can attend online very satisfactorily. And that's basically the theme of our talk today, is how online teaching that we developed during MCO will continue post MCO in the new teaching world, and how we can apply technology in a low cost way, because some of the hybrid teaching technologies can be quite expensive. So, as Nouro kindly introduced you, I'm Dr. James Welch, the Director of Pre-University Studies here in IMU. Ms. Tung is one of my maths lecturers. She also taught physics and guided me to teach physics at pre-university level. She's the techie person in the department, e-learning coordinator and digitization coordinator. And my degree is in physics, but it also contains computer science and maths. So for someone from my generation, I'm reasonably techie, and my department as a whole are very good with the tech. So we'll try and demonstrate some of that today. So IMU, towards the end of MCO, purchased 4 hybrid classrooms, and they're very high quality with scanning cameras, beautiful interactive electronics, TVs, etc. But obviously it's prohibitive to have rooms like this in every room in the university until you know everybody's using it. And obviously for medicine and dentistry, the core subjects, high tech like that lends itself to. But at pre-university level, where it's a blend of school and university, you can get away with good quality low tech, as we're going to show you, and make it interactive for the students. And in timetabling a university where you have a center for pre-university studies with 500 students and 7 other faculties, everybody's competing for the hybrid classrooms, however many there might be. So if you can make a hybrid classroom from a standard classroom, then more people can engage in the hybrid teaching format. So it's necessary to prioritize the hybrid classrooms for key courses such as medicine and dentistry, pharmacy, health sciences, etc. That's where the students are doing their high-tech learning at undergraduate level, whereas at pre-university level, it's a blend, as I say, of school and university. So it's a transition. So the low-tech works reasonably well, given the nature of the teaching and learning and the content of the course. So how do we turn a conventional classroom into a low-cost hybrid equivalent? I'll show you that in a minute, if my tech works. So why a hybrid classroom? Okay, so students are back face-to-face. Why not revert back to the old days of fully face-to-face chalk and talk? Well, in the post-COVID era, there's still COVID around. There's other diseases around, illnesses, but some students might have to stay off campus because they're unwell, but they might be well enough to attend lectures from home. They could be international students waiting for their visa at the beginning of the academic year. Sometimes it takes them a month to get here, so they can engage online, sometimes with a time difference. People isolating due to infection, obviously from COVID, or people who've tested positive but are not sick, but they're required by the government to quarantine. So if those students were left out, if it's only face-to-face teaching, they would miss a week of classes. So the hybrid teaching allows them to join online. Obviously, face-to-face is compulsory, but not all of the lectures are face-to-face. In pre-university studies in foundation in science, all of our skills-based teaching, such as tutorials, which we'll see in a minute, laboratories, they're by and large face-to-face. About 50% of the lectures are online and 50% are face-to-face. If you take a plenary lecture that's introductory or doesn't have any difficult concepts, it can be taught very well online. If you get to the more difficult lectures, the core lectures, then we have them face to face. Why do this? Well, to limit a lot of students. I mentioned Foundation has 500 students in this post-COVID world where there's still infection going around. Obviously, the mortality rate is lower. You don't want to pack 500 students onto the campus. So you need to be cautious with your students' health and welfare. So how do we set it up? How do we make it hybrid? Okay, so you walk into the classroom, you have your desktop computer or your laptop, which is connected to your display. And that's in the conventional projectors, you're plugging in your VGA lead or your HDMI, and that's projecting onto the screen. So that's limited. If I want to then share my tablet, and do some writing on my tablet, I would have to plug out the plug and plug it into the tablet with an adapter, and it gets quite complicated. So how can we share multiple devices in the same meeting without all of this plug and play and constantly resetting? Okay, so teaching content. You can share the teaching content. So as you teach, you can be writing on your desktop. For example, if I'm using a whiteboard, let's say there's a whiteboard here, and the student online, the camera is not pointing at the whiteboard. If you're in a hybrid classroom, you have a scanning camera, but in a low-cost hybrid room, you don't. So the students online will miss out on the whiteboard possibly, particularly if it's very large. If you can make your whiteboard electronic, then everybody gets to see it. And in addition, it's recorded. So students who are weak students or miss some of the concepts or didn't understand how I explained something or my teachers explained something can go back over it again. This wasn't available before online teaching. So one of the positives post-COVID from a teaching and learning point of view. Also, when you're teaching maths online, if you're using a computer, you have to use equation editor. When you're teaching chemistry, you have to use ChemDraw, etc. It gets quite complicated and it's quite slow. If you can just draw, as we'll see in a minute for some sample maths questions, makes it much easier. And it's obviously recorded. So I'm fixed with this old style mic here. I might be holding it in my hand, walking around the lecture theater. If it's a big lecture theater, it's mounted here today for this purpose. But if I want to write on my tablet and hold a microphone, cannot, okay, unless it's mounted. So sometimes in a tutorial, you're walking around and you're addressing different students. So you have to bring the mic with you. So how can we get around that relatively inexpensively? This, I don't know if you can see this, but this is a small clip-on mic. I can't see my screen. Oh, I can, yeah. Small clip-on mic. Put it on here, my tie. USB plug-in, plug it into the computer. Select that mic when you start your Teams meeting and or your Zoom meeting, and you're recording and you're walking around. And I've tested this. It has a range of 50 meters, so you can go pretty far with it, and it does block out a lot of the background sound. So that's the mic problem sorted. In theory, then you can put the mic through the computer, out the output of your computer and into the PA system if there's no lagging. So if you're using something like Wi-Fi speakers, there shouldn't be. Older technology with cables, there might be a little bit of feedback and lagging. So it depends on the setup. Okay, so whiteboard, you can use your stylus, etc. I'll demonstrate that in a minute. I'll go through the slides first, and you basically have a virtual whiteboard. In the old days, when the lecture or the tutorial was over, the teacher wiped the whiteboard, everything gone. So a student who was blur, who didn't take it down right, could not revisit it. If it's in the recording, they can say, oh, hang on, I missed that little bit there, or this is how they derived the equation or derived the chemical formula. They can see the process again. Weaker students tend to get lost. If there's 10 stages in the derivation of a formula, they might get lost at stage number 4, whereas A students get it the first time. So when you have a large range of banding, such as there is in Foundation in Science, you have to provide as many mechanisms as you can to accommodate the weaker students who learn that little bit slower. And the recorded tutorial is a key example of that. Flipped classroom. So all the students join, not just those online, the students in the room. So there's some people here in the room in this Zoom meeting. I'm in the Zoom meeting, as you'll see multiple times, not on my phone, but on my tablet and on my computer, but I could join on my phone. One caution, when you're joining on your phone, make sure and mute your notifications, because there could be emails or Teams messages with corporate information that you don't want the students to see, or examination information. And for your WhatsApp or Telegram or whatever you're using privately, you don't want to see your private communication. So if you're displaying your phone or electronic device, make sure the notifications are off. So in the case of the students in the classroom and those online, but let's take the classroom, for example. Student is in the classroom and Ms. Tung is going to play this role in a minute. I can say, Ms. Tung, do question number 5 of the maths tutorial. I will stop sharing, allow the student to share, and that student will do the problem in front of all her peers, maybe with the help of peers if it's problem-based learning. So you can do flipped learning straight away, electronically. So the students can engage in the teaching process and be an active part of it. And you can also help and advise them. Attendance. So we'll try and run a Teams meeting, share a Teams meeting if the bandwidth allows, and everybody joins the meeting. So you don't have to go back to paper-based attendance or Google surveys, a separate software. You just go into the attendance in Teams, you click on participants and you click attendance, and it immediately downloads it. And you've got an electronic recording of the attendance. In Foundation in Science, attendance is a requirement, 75%. Not so much in undergraduate, but we do try and encourage the students to obviously attend all of the teaching events, given that their parents are paying considerable fees for it. So the old problem of attendance, I can remember before MCO, if we had a very large classroom, like 200 students, we used to pass around an attendance sheet and it used to get stalled. It never made it to the end of the class. So now we have 300 students in one class, it's not going to make it. So electronic attendance is taken immediately. It also means students can't sign for other students, but we assume all the students are being honest. Okay, we're now ready for the demonstration, correct, Lucien? Okay, so I'll stop sharing my slides and try to share my tablet. Screen. This is a pretty old tablet, so I'm using it as an example. Okay, great, can see? Okay. Just leaning. This is where the walk around mic comes in, because I'm leaning over to my tablet and the mic is over here. So that's an example of the advantage of the walk around mic. I hope I'm still on good sound levels there, guys. Okay. So where are we? Okay, let's see what I have open. So I teach mobile apps to the students. You can see here, this is FS118, Foundation in Science, April 2018. And they've, big class, they've written lots of apps. I'll show you one good app from them. So basically the theme of the apps, the rubrics are to be educational, scientific, medical. So a lot of them are going to be medical students. So frequently they do anatomy apps. This is going to be a bit laggy. Okay. So this is, I don't know if this, so it tells you information. It tells you what to do. Click on the part of the skeleton that you wish to know more about. So what they've done is they segmented the picture into the head, the thorax, left and right arm, and left and right leg. So let's hit the head. And then they have information. So the point of this is, if I have a new group, like a group have just finished, they're actually completing their projects this week from the September intake of 222. I can demonstrate the apps. They've never written an app, so they're kind of going, how am I going to do this? It's very difficult. If I can showcase earlier students' apps, it gives them the confidence to actually do it. When they see what their prior peers can do, it makes them competitive. Some of them may also take the code from this app and decide to build on it, make a second generation, improve on it. They're allowed to do that. In coding, you can do that. I can also show the coding software. What are we doing? Not lagging too much. So this is MIT App Inventor, which we're coding the app in. And you can see, whoops, didn't mean to hit that. Okay, this is slow. You can see the code. It's a drag and drop block system. So that's their code. And you can see what the front face is going to be before you make it into an app. Next, we don't crash. Okay. We have a tutorial. Can see, yep, this is a physics tutorial. I teach the optics of the eye. So I can be teaching this. Let's see if I get my pen to work. This is a pretty low-tech pen. Okay. It's not working very well. Ah, good. So I can hit highlight. And I can highlight my notes or write or whatever. Okay. You have to practice. Okay. I've been writing with a pen all my life. The younger generations have been using these more often, so they're more used. I'm pretty poor at it, but I have to go slowly. However, this is a pretty low tech. This is a 50 ringgit pen, I'm saying, pretty low. And this is a pretty old Galaxy A tablet. I'm doing that on purpose, okay? However, Miss Tong is now going to pretend to be a flip student. She has an iPad and a very fancy pen, and she can do it much better. My staff get better tech than me. That's how generous I am. So I will stop sharing now. And let me see, is there anything else I wanted to share? No, that's it. Okay. So I got to stop share. Hold on. Stop share. Okay, over to you, Ms. Tong. So I'm going to ask Ms. Tong as a student, please do question number X in the tutorial, please, for the class. And she could be sitting with a group of her friends they're all working together, advising each other. Okay. So those of you who remember your maths, you're about to be taught a lesson. Take your time, Richard. We have plenty of time. Always remember to off your mic and your camera. Otherwise you get feedback like that. Okay. The Miss Tong. Okay, there she is writing now. So you notice the feedback. So if you have the speaker open and or the mic on, you're going to get lots of reverb, particularly with 100 students in the room. It gets so the students have to be disciplined in their use of the tech. Again, this will be recorded in the Teams meeting. This is saved, so everything that is shared is saved in the recording for both the online students and the face-to-face students.
Dr. James,
Yes.
I am stuck.
You're stuck. Okay. Well, it's a long time since I've taught maths, so I'm not going to unstuck you. Okay. Ms. Tong is a maths teacher, so you can help yourself.
Okay.
I mainly teach computer science and physics. I haven't taught maths in a long time, but it's there in the back of my head sometimes. Okay, student, well done.
Complete.
Okay, and if you wanted, you could grade that. You could tell the students, if sometimes students make mistakes in mid-semester tests and they want to know where they went wrong. So you can actually critique the answer in a positive way. This is where you went wrong. Don't make the same mistake in the exam. Likewise, if you had a mentor or a student who wanted to talk to you one-on-one because they're struggling in their maths, that student can say, do you mind if I do a sample question now? And if I did this in the exam, what grade would I get? So if they're blur about, where they are they an A, B, or C student? Maybe because they're not engaging with their peers, this is a great way to say, yes, if you do that in the exam, you'll do great. If you do that in the exam, you'll get 50%, etc. So they can gauge their academic level and hopefully up their level of study. Are we done with that, Ms. Tong?
Let me unshare.
Okay. We have plenty of time. Go ahead. Unshare. Okay.
Okay.
Right.
So,
are you going to share something else?
Yeah. Do you want to share
the
Teams invitations?
Okay. Are you going to start the Teams meeting?
You want to show the attendance?
Yep. Do you want me to? Will you start the meeting and then invite me in?
You are in.
Hmm.
So let me share my screen first.
Okay. Do I have to start Teams?
Yes.
Okay, I'm running now. I closed it earlier. Okay, so Ms. Tong is going to start, oddly enough, a Teams meeting within the Zoom meeting. You normally wouldn't do this, but just for the purposes of this demonstration, we're putting Teams inside Zoom.
So this is usually our students, they will join these meetings for the online students. So we can use this as the attendance recording as well. So we can join the meeting.
Can you invite me in?
Sure.
I'll be the student this time. Join. Okay, it's coming up here.
So I will invite
Oh, hang on.
Dr. James.
So now Ms. Tong, who's the maths teacher, is going to be the teacher and I'm going to be the student. No, don't unmute. Camera
Okay.
off.
So you can see from here, basically when the students join in, we share the slide like this, and it is automatic record when we join the classes. It is automatic record here. You can see that the class will automatic record. The lecturers don't have to do anything once they join. And once the meeting ends, the attendance will going to be recorded. So it won't be any hassle or any extra works that we will need to do from here. So the slide can be shared. We can share the slide. We can share the tutorial questions and present our ideas to all of us, all of the students. At the same time, our iPads was connected to the projector so that it can be shown to the students on the face-to-face class. So this is how we do the classes online.
Yep. And then you can take the attendance.
Yes, let's end the meeting and let's show the attendance. Boss, can you end the class?
Hmm?
Okay, never mind. Let me end the class.
Have you taken the attendance? I can. Maybe. Do you want me to leave?
Yes.
Okay, Ken. Teacher's kicking me out. I'm the blur student who stays in the meeting. For 1
So
hour
you can
afterwards.
see that once the meeting ends, the recording will stop and the attendance will be generated and the recording files also will be there under the meeting chats. So you can see that the recording is ready.
Yep.
And the attendance will be ready in a few times. So beside that, we can also save our attendance before we end the meeting as well, right, boss?
Yep.
That's all from my side.
Okay, teacher, thank you very much. I'll share screen then if I can.
Yes,
Finish up. We're going to be a bit early. Back to my slides. Okay, so that's a demonstration over. It worked pretty well. It's a bit confusing when you're on a Teams meeting in a Zoom meeting, but that's only for the purpose of the conference. Obviously, you'll be in one or the other. The tech is slightly different. In the Teams meeting, if you want to select this mic, you have to start the meeting first and then select mic. In Zoom, I think you can select the mic globally. Then how it shares, for example, in Teams, you have to have an account. For IMU, you have to have a Teams account or be cleared by IT before you can join a meeting. Whereas in Zoom, once you have the code and the password and you're admitted, you join as different people. So if you look in the meeting we're in now, I have joined on my tablet, Dr. James' tablet. I've joined on my laptop. That's 2 separate joins. Whereas in the case of the Teams meeting, I will join on my computer and my tablet on my phone, but I'll only appear once in the meeting. There won't be 3 of me with different titles. So you need to adjust this principle for whichever package you're using. It could be ClassIn, for example, one I've seen recently, which is a very good package, and a close friend of mine uses it, and it's really good. So it depends on the platform. So you have to make minor adjustments itself. I mean, Ms. Tung and I would be happy to advise you if you want in this regard. So Where's my, huh? Ah, okay. So as my friend told me last night when she read the slides, and she said, low-cost hybrid classroom teaching is a win-win situation for the students, lecturers, and the university or the organization as a whole. Okay, so everybody wins. You can focus your expensive hybrid teaching rooms, which are excellent, to key classes for key groups that need that level of technology. You can allow students to join online. In theory, for example, instead of the old days where everybody's in a computer lab with banks and banks of computers, if I'm teaching mobile apps, the students could be dispersed all over the campus. They could be joining from the library, from the coffee shop, or anywhere that's appropriate for teaching and quiet. So you can, particularly in a smaller campuses, you can spread your resources wider. You don't have to cram people into a room, etc. It's a requirement to be here face to face, but maybe in some other universities, it's not. However, it does require discipline from the students. That's why the attendance is important. And you do get ill-disciplined students, for example, who join, wait for the attendance. If you have a small group of students, 10, you can see if someone leaves the meeting. If you have 100 students or 300, as in one of our, there's no chance if someone leaves that you're going to detect them. So take the attendance at the beginning, click, take it at the end, and you got to, or even in the middle. Okay, then you get students who join the meeting online. I don't know if you've experienced this, and then they fall asleep or go somewhere else. And then when you end the meeting, okay, don't close the meeting, keep it open, but tell the other students to leave and go to the next class. You can find students who are still in the meeting hours later, sometimes days later, and you can tell their mentor to talk to them, that they're not being disciplined in their studies. So you can use it in a positive way. I mean, in terms of disciplining students, we don't have that policy in IMU. We try to reward the students who are there, the students who are behaving well. It's a system of rewards. So even though your students are hybrid or distance, you can still control them, particularly when they're young. Foundation students can be as young as 16 and then up to 20. So they've just left school, and in the school environment, they were fairly disciplined. Teacher says, go here, go there. So what happens in the university environment, where it's more self-learning and oriented towards more mature students who are in the faculties, who might be in their early 20s, many of them, they're quite focused. So when you give this level of academic freedom and self-determination, you still have to, with the younger students, police it reasonably well. You want to make sure that they've got out of bad habits before they go on to undergraduate course. So this is the new normal, folks. Better get used to it and get techie if you want to be a teacher. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll take some questions. Hasnain, have we time? Yeah, okay, thank you. And you can online clap as well. Okay, I'll look in the chat. Are we posting questions in the chat? We are, yeah, okay. Nurul, am I addressing them? Hasnain, am I addressing the questions, or are they going to be proctored? No questions yet.
Can I ask a question?
Please, Hasnain.
Okay, thanks first of all sharing your own experiences and all that. What's your backup? What if technology fails? How you survive?
Great question. That? So, okay, in Foundation in Science, we have 3 intakes every year. Undergraduate courses have 2. In the UK and Australia, they only have 1. But providing the syllabus hasn't changed much. Okay, there isn't a significant change to the syllabus. You will have recordings from a previous intake. So you can, if it all goes wrong, Dr. James forget to hit record, which frequently happens, whereas Ms. Tong has set it up automatically, then you can say, oh guys, I forgot to record, or the recording is corrupted, or whatever it might be, or the Wi-Fi goes down in the middle of the lecture. Then if you don't have the facilities and the time in your timetable to re-deliver the whole lecture, considering we're quite busy, then you can engage in the previous recording. Now, if there have been subtle changes to the syllabus from the last time, it was, let's say one chapter is slightly different, then you just point out that the recording is valid except for this bit, and you can give them extra information. So the recordings is the way to go. you know. It's a no-brainer. That answer your question, Jose? No. But there are loads of backups you can have, but usually in a lecture, when you're under pressure with 200 students there, if the tech goes wrong, it goes wrong, you know, and by the time you've recovered, you've lost some traction. But usually it's okay. But you do get students dropping in and out of the lecture saying, can you repeat the last 5 slides, please? Cannot. We have to teach to the bulk of the students. If we stopped the lecture and repeated the slides for the student whose Wi-Fi went down, then the other students will complain. However, the student whose Wi-Fi went down can engage in the recording then later and talk to their peers. Most of them talk to their peers. What did Dr. James mean when he said this? So it doesn't produce a barrage of questions. So there's multiple ways to do it, but the main backup is the recording, which is on the cloud, obviously. You don't have to deal with 2 hour long video recordings will be too costly to store on our own hard drive. So they're on the cloud and you can make a backup of them later. Okay, thanks. Let me see if there's any questions in here. Okay. I'll stop share.
Okay, can we ask one more question?
Yeah, please.
What kind of plugins you use in Microsoft Teams? You know, maybe you like there's plugins,
Whiteboard and things like that. Yeah, we use Whiteboard, but we find OneNote is better. Go on.
For what purpose? Could you explain a bit?
Well, for the Whiteboard / OneNote sharing is for the tutorials mainly, and to highlight in lectures as well. So you can highlight in your PowerPoint. If you make a PDF of the PowerPoint, then you can highlight in that. In the tutorials, you can do what Ms. Tung was doing and actually write the equation and do the derivations. Obviously, you need to practice your writing with a stylus, otherwise the students will complain. I'm not very good at it. I do try. So I generally stick to what I will do in mine. I'll have a teacher's version of the PDF and I'll click every time I hit enter, another equation will appear. So it'll be printed. Okay, it's a bit more laborious, but it's there. But if the writing is poor, the weaker students will use it as a reason why they might have failed the exams. So you don't want to give them any excuse. Okay, no disrespect to them, but there are the weaker students who basically aren't doing any work, are always looking for a get out of jail card. So if your writing is poor, they'll try and use that. Whereas with I mainly use Android because I have to demo the apps in Android, because you have to become a developer to be able to do it in Apple. They do work on Apple devices, but a bit crudely. But most of the staff are using iPads that we've just got for them this year and styluses. So the quality of the writing and the tech in the iPads is much higher. So for example, this Android stylus is very inexpensive. How much is a stylus for an iPad?
iPads
Good
pencil
one.
Is 600.
600 ringgits. Okay. So, and it's not just that they're overcharging you, the quality is way better. And, you know, I have friends who are teaching online using Apple devices and they do things that I couldn't do on an Android device, you know. Also, it's less laggy, the tech is better. But as I say, it's less flexible. So if you want to teach coding, it's a bit more difficult. However, in the coding package, you can use an emulator. So when you're coding, you can bring up a QR code and the iPad users can share the code on their phone. It's not actually an app on their phone. It's just being communicated by the software so they can get a simulation of their app and how it would look. And then they have to go to their Android friends to test it, or we have tablets that they can share and test it as well.
Any tool for assessment or engagement?
Apart from that, we use a lot of Kahoots.
Kahoots, yeah.
So
and yeah, no, it depends. I mean, different staff use different things. You know what I mean? Aisha's here from the chemistry team. They would use ChemDraw and other things. It depends on the subject being taught. In physics, it's pretty straightforward. Maths is pretty straightforward. In biology, then they're using Articulate 360 and some gamification in it. I pretty much leave it up to the specific subject teams. We don't force, if you force a technology or a software on your staff, it's not to everybody's liking. So within, obviously the basis is Teams, but you know, how they trick around with the Teams and how they use it in an imaginative way, I leave it up to them. And they're pretty imaginative, and you know, it works. I mean, we get evaluations back on the lectures from all subjects, and even though they're taught differently, the evaluations are all positive. It doesn't say biology is better tech than chemistry. It's a different tech because it's a different type of subject. So I think as a boss, you have to leave it up to the subject experts. I mean, you know, I wouldn't tell the chemist how to teach chemistry or the biologist how to teach biology. That would be a mistake.
Yes, Dr. James, we have one question from Maria. He said, hi, Dr. James, what was the feedback like from the students attending hybrid classes?
It's generally positive. I mean, they've come to expect it. When MCO or COVID first kicked in and the universities were closed at short notice, the faculties have 2 semesters and longer breaks, so they could adjust their academic calendar. In foundation, we had to get teaching up and running as soon as possible because it's a 1-year course and there's 3 14-week semesters. So there's no room in the academic calendar for adjustments. So the team really put their nose down and worked on the tech. Obviously, at the beginning, we had async lectures, which are pre-recorded PowerPoint lectures with a voiceover, and sync lectures, which are PowerPoint online with a recording. Generally speaking, we've stopped doing the async lectures. I'll tell you the reason why in a minute, because most of the students favor the recording and the interactive online lecture or face-to-face lecture. The async lectures were great. The A-star students loved the async lectures because they could go through them really quickly, okay? And they didn't need much teaching support. Whereas the weaker students, so we have a high range of banding. We have students with C's coming in and students with straight A's. The lower banded students tended to get lost on the asyncs. They tended to procrastinate. They tended to give up, okay? So you would see they would log into the async. You can monitor it on the e-learning, and then 10 minutes later, they'd have logged out again. And there's no way they went through it in 10 minutes. So that's the kind of feedback. So it was gradually, we flipped from async, which was our first line of defense when MCO kicked in, to then, because it doesn't require much tech. It's just sitting at home. However, it's very time consuming. To record a 2-hour lecture async can take up to 6 hours because you're constantly doing each slide again. I live in a condo beside a motorway, motorbike goes by, you got to do it all again. So it was very tedious. So it's more flexible to do it this way. You know, it's a bit chaotic. I mean, you can have tech issues, etc. Back to Haslane's question, as well as the previous recordings, we also have previous asyncs that we recorded, but we're not continuing to record them because you can't teach online 2 hours and then do an async for 6 hours. It's just, there isn't enough time in the day. So the asyncs are there, but we stopped doing them about a year ago, a bit longer. So they're beginning to get a little bit old with respect to where the curriculum is now. But if you had the time and the resources to do asyncs, fine. But we have 20 staff and 500 students and 3 intakes with 3 semesters. So there's no break for us. Thanks for the question, Maria.
Hi, Prof. James.
Yeah.
Ithil here. Thanks for the informative talk, Prof. Just one question. I don't know if this is covered during the course of your talk. We noticed that when we use Teams, the attendance, the downloading of the attendance can be done only by the person who creates the Teams group.
Yep.
Is there any way the others, like for example, I take classes for different modules,
Yep.
and the group is created by the module coordinator. So I will not be able to download the attendance. Is there any setting or any way where we can view it and download the attendance?
That's a great question. Just adding on to that, I was giving a lecture the other day to 300 students online, and they had started the lecture already. So I couldn't take the attendance. So then you're relying on the honesty of the student. So I was saying who started the lecture, and the student was obviously terrified. They thought I was going to, kill them or something. So I eventually found out who it was, and he sent me the attendance. The problem with that is that they can add their friends to the attendance. It's just an Excel file. So And then you get students who don't show up, and then they retake the attendance when they join, okay, which overwrites the previous attendance, which may have been the true attendance. So, you know, 99% of our students are honest, hardworking professionals, but the 1%, as you know, take up a lot of our time. So yes, Ms. Tung can elaborate. You can set it up so it's locked down to you, you're controlling it. But if you do it, I'm a bit lazy. Sometimes I'll go into the channel and just start meeting. That's pretty chaotic, you know, but so you have to monitor that, but you can set it up with the link. Maybe Ms. Tung, you can elaborate.
Actually, for your cases, right, if let's say the link was created by the module coordinators, what you can do is inside the meetings, you can create a forms that you can ask the students to click the attendance. So it is pretty fast. It is inside the pool questions that link to your Microsoft Forms in your in your Microsoft Forms. You can always access it and check with the students' attendance from there. So then you don't have to take the attendance from the module coordinators. Or somehow normally to check the students, usually we will say, oh, this is the quiz. I will create a quiz and say, okay, please answers. Everyone have to answers, and your attendance will be captured in this quiz. So that's this is how we can do from that.
But you're right. I mean, particularly lecturers of my generation, as I said, I'm reasonably techie, so I can police it. But if you're not reasonably techie, the students know more about the tech than you, so they can quickly take advantage. So you have to really know what you're doing. Otherwise, things can go wrong. So, you know, it requires rigorous training, and not everybody is techie. So they can take it to a certain stage. They don't have to get super techie with the tablets. They can just give a conventional PowerPoint, maybe a little bit of writing on, just go through a normal didactic lecture. Because if that's better for them than trying to get the tech working and the lecture is constantly being disrupted and they're not good at bandwidth. So a conventional lecture taught online well is better than a high-tech one taught badly. So you need to be on top of the tech for sure. Yes, Sunil.
Hi, Dr.
Okay.
Just wondering, since our teaching learning philosophy, the pedagogy is on self-directed learning, I'm not sure how much are we emphasizing on this, how well we are training, because I am quite aware that the school and college system where most of our students come from are not brought in that way. They're more focused on memorizing and rote learning, right? So what's your take on making most of these hybrid classrooms as a flipped classroom and then using various tools to teach? I've done that in the MBBS program where I ask the students to come and prepare so that there is more of a discussion, because often we spend time on didactic lectures. Again, the concentration becomes a major issue. Students really don't listen to you. They don't respond, especially when it's online. So what's
I think it's a trade-off. The more problem-based learning and flipped learning you have, the better it is in the students in the long term. However, the requirements that you get through the syllabus, particularly in foundation, because you have to give them a foundation in science so they can cope up in medicine, there's a requirement that you have to, hit all the boxes in the syllabus. As they get older with you in medicine, yes, you can rely on it. For example, I know there's a lot of OSPE practice online, but the students don't always engage with it. And then they realize they should have, because, learning OSPEs is really self-directed. You can't teach someone an OSPE. You can, but it doesn't work so well. So the students have to be disciplined, particularly as coming from the culture in school here where rote learning is. If you have them in foundation for a year before they do medicine, then by semester 3, hopefully you've got them, the bulk of them, out of rote learning and into self-directed learning, and hopefully engaging in the formative, the non-summative assessments. So day one in undergraduate, someone who's just come in from A levels, who's an excellent student with excellent qualifications, might be more school-like in their thinking. You would hope by the time they go to the clinical campus that they're self-directed, you know, that they have to, but it's a perennial problem. So you can just try, but I do see that there's a correlation. If you hold an exam board, the students who are failing are getting C, you can actually go into the e-learning and see how much they engage in the formative, and you'll say to your mentor, the reason this guy got an A and the reason you got a D plus is because you didn't engage in the lecture. So you can use it, the e-learning platform, to policing is a bad word, but to monitor how much your mentor is engaging, because they will complain and they'll procrastinate, but if they know their peers are doing it, then they will do it. So you can make it peer driven.
That's right. I'm also asking this because you know, we've School of Medicine has created about 300 odd micro learning objects.
Yeah.
Which we have been looking at. We've been vetting these things. It's there on our e-learning portal, but again, how much of it is being used is
well, you know, you can embed in the assessment, and one of the people online here asked a question about how do we assess. No, Kaziata, I think, asked a question about which figures in with this as well. Let me see.
The questions ask, what is the effective methods to assess the students through the hybrid classes?
So if it's a passive online, they have to engage themselves, then you can set metrics, rubrics for them. You must engage in at least 5 of these formative videos or OSPEs or whatever they are within the semester. And there can be a grade for that if they don't do it to 5. Now, they can just log in and run the video and go and watch Korean dramas on TV if they want to, okay? But they're wasting their parents' money, particularly in medicine where the fees are very high. So you really have to assume that most of the students are going to be professional and engaging and do it right. If you set the bar low for the tricky students, it demotivates the very good students. And you know, when they get to faculty here, particularly medicine and dentistry, the banding is pretty tight. They're all pretty good students. So once they're band 1, 2, or 3, most of them are going to engage. It's the weaker students who need to engage more who engage the least. Now, I have a mentee who's repeating foundation in science, and she was a weak student last year, probably a B minus student, and she's learned to engage, and she's repeating foundation. She's getting A in everything. So she's learned it. However, it involves repeating the course, which is expensive. So some of them get it, some of them don't, you know, but how you know, as we say, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, unfortunately. So it's a perennial problem. But as I say, you have to be positive and not go in and say, oh, you're all not engaging, you're all very bad, because that demotivates the 90% of them who are. You've got to isolate them through the mentoring system and say, look, this is the reason why you're failing or getting low grades in the exam. It's not an easy one to solve. I wish I had that. If I could solve that, I'd have a lot more time in my day. Mentoring. Go on.
Actually, how do we access or check how effective is our content? Because all the recording was recorded and it was sent to Microsoft Stream, and we check how they access to our contents. For example, our micro learnings content, the recording of our the lectures or tutorials that we have in our hybrid classroom. From my observations, it's almost 40% of our students will check the recording again.
Yep.
Yes, so it's very useful for the students, and our micro learning contents has most of the students have access, and we receive a very positive feedbacks in our module evaluations and everything. And to access the students from the online students from the hybrid classrooms, we always ask the students to unmute their mic to share their answers and everything. So to make sure that we keep them attended during the classes as well.
Yeah, and with the unmuting the mic, I mean, students who are online are told to dress professionally as if they're in the class, you know, and be ready for it. And if, you know, you wear a tudung, make sure you have your tudung on so you can put the camera on without causing any embarrassment to yourself. So students online are being treated like face-to-face. They should be no different and they should have the same discipline. To answer that question, I want asked by Ms. Noor Kuzazia, if I pronounced that correctly, how do we effectively assess? Well, I can make that example driven. In English in Foundation, which is very important, it's core module, they have assessments like tests, etc., and exams. And they're locked down in the OAS system because they have to, there's security reasons for that. But they have formative tutorials where they do essay writing, and we can correct the formative tutorials using the stylus and the pen in a PDF file and return that to the students. So instead of having 300 essay papers like in the old days piled up on the desk, it's all on your laptop and you can share it with the students. So I can remember we used to give, and same in the laboratories, which is an assessment. If they, in order to teach them what Sunil was referring to being self-disciplined, they're told to engage in pre-laboratory information. If they don't, they're going to get it, they're going to mess up the lab or not have time to do it. So they'll learn that they should have done some pre-laboratory formative work. Then in the lab, we were going to go back to paper-based labs where they write it out, but now we're going to equip the lab demos, hopefully with tablets where they can correct it online. So with 500 students, and how many labs would there be, Aisha? About 30 in the year across all intakes. It's, you know, it's a whole rainforest full of paper. So we need to do this. And it's actually quite quick. Once you get into it using the PDF and the pen, is quite quick to mark it and give feedback. Okay. Any other questions there before we, what time are we to finish? Has 9, 10?
One more, last one. What is the pros and cons of hybrid classes?
Okay. Well, the pros I've alluded to, you can record, you can accommodate students who, for whatever reason, visa or illness or something else, cannot make it on campus. For example, this week, a lot of the students are going back to their hometown to vote. So they shouldn't have to miss out over ones in the Klang Valley. So we're being flexible in the attendance this week, and students who are not ill or have the usual reasons have a valid reason in going to vote so they can engage in the online classes. If the class occurs at a time when they're flying to East Malaysia or something, and they show their tickets, then they can engage in the recording and be considered present for that. So it allows you a lot more flexibility than the traditional way. The cons of online, as I alluded to here, is things can go wrong. Tech can go wrong. So if you're 100% reliant on the tech to deliver your lecture, and you've as Hasnain alluded to, plan B, the recording, or revert just to classic didactic teaching using your PowerPoint slides, then yes, it can go wrong. So have a backup, have a plan A, B, and C. So your recordings, your asyncs, whatever it might be, there's always a way. Okay, I'm being told to stop talking. Okay. Thanks a million, everybody, for joining, friends and colleagues. And I hope it was clear and you could understand my Irish accent.